Order. We're all with this crowd. We're all cozy in this in this room for sure. This meeting, as witnesses know, pursuing to Standing Order 83-1, is on the pre-budget consultations for the 2017 budget. And my apologies to the witnesses before we even start. We found out yesterday that we have votes tonight at 6 o'clock, so I think the clerk has informed people we're under a really tight time frame for both presentations and questions, and we felt it was probably wiser to tighten it up a little bit rather than have witnesses on the next panel sitting around waiting for however long it might take for us to do votes. So that's why we tightened it up. So we will hold presenters to 5 minutes in their presentations, so that we can get through, and then at least have 2 questioners from each of the government, 2 from the official opposition and 1 from the third party. So starting then with the Canadian Convenience Stores Association, Mr. Shera, President, and Mr. Schulten, past President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tinder Chera, and I'm the incoming President of the Canadian Convenience Stores Association, and I'm joined today by my colleague and the outgoing President, Alex Schulten. This year's pre-budget process asked respondents to discuss their ideas for improving the lives of Canadians, communities, and businesses. I wanted to briefly highlight how Canada's convenience stores contribute in all 3 areas. Our stores help Canadians by providing employment opportunities to over 225,000 individuals across the country. We support communities by providing essential consumer products in urban, rural, and remote locations. And our sector is the face of small businesses, with over 26,000 retail locations serving over 10 million Canadians each and every day. And in 2015 alone, Canadians purchased over $56 billion worth of goods and services from our stores, resulting in over $21 billion in tax revenue for governments. Our pre-budget recommendations for 2017 are focused around 3 challenges facing our industry. I will start with credit card swipe fees, which remain for Canada's small businesses amongst the highest in the world. Credit card fees for our retail members range from 1.5% to 4% on individual purchases, compared to other countries like Australia and the European Union, where there are specific hard caps in place to support small businesses. We believe lower credit card fees is not only a positive impact for businesses, in that it allows them to free up additional revenue to support their businesses, but it also helps consumers who presently bear the costs, with businesses being forced to increase their product prices. That's why we're calling on the Government of Canada to reduce these excessive swipe fees by introducing caps that are in line with what other countries have done. To that end, we would like to thank the Minister of Finance and MP Linda Lapointe for their recent efforts and commitment to review this issue and to land on a fair and equitable solution. Another challenge facing our stores is what we believe to be unnecessary and costly regulations, specifically the proposed plain packaging requirements for tobacco products. At present, there is a plethora of tobacco control requirements which our retail members are tasked with implementing. Stringent age testing requirements, restrictions on advertising and promotion, display bans, and graphic warning labels. All of these regulations together have had a positive impact in reducing youth tobacco consumption rates, which recently Health Canada, through its surveys, found was at an all-time low. Make no mistake, our association and our retail members strongly support efforts to prevent young people from accessing tobacco products, and we will continue to work diligently with our members and with our partners in government in this regard. That said, we do not believe that proposed plain packaging requirements will have an impact on youth consumption rates. If one was to review the impact of such regulations in the only country in the world that has implemented similar requirements, Australia, what you'll find is that youth tobacco rates have not changed since the requirement was introduced. What has changed, however, is that the negative impact on retail operations. Retailers are struggling with inventory control, staff training, and customer transactions, all of which have increased costs for retailers without any of the accompanying consumption reduction benefits. Lastly, our association supports the government's commitment to reduce Canada's small business tax rate to 9%. We believe that this will free up additional revenues for businesses to invest in their business, to train their employees, and to provide the best possible service to their customers. And in this regard, we would like to see the reduction implemented as soon as possible. And to support the government's desire to promote healthier product choices for Canadians, we are also recommending tax incentives that are designed to help Canada's convenience store operators to purchase, store, and sell fresh fruits and vegetables in a more effective manner, which we would be more than happy to support the government going forward on. Thank you, and we would be happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And I might mention that members have all your presentations on their mobile units as well. Canadian Medical Association, Mr. Avery, President, and Mr. Adams, Chief Policy Advisor. Go ahead, Mr. Avery.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the Canadian Medical Association and our 83 members, thank you for the opportunity to appear as part of your pre-budget consultations. The CMA strongly supports the federal government's commitment to work with provinces and territories towards a new health accord with defined objectives and long-term funding agreement. To help deliver on this commitment, we've outlined 6 recommendations for prompt federal action to ensure Canada is prepared to meet the healthcare needs of its growing and ageing populations. Firstly, additional funding to the provinces and territories targeted to support seniors' care by means of a demographic top-up to the Canada Health Transfer. Secondly, a targeted fund for home and palliative care innovation. Thirdly, infrastructure investments to improve and provide for more long-term care. Fourth, a coverage for the highly expensive prescription medications. Fifth, more financial support for family caregivers. And sixth, an exemption for group medical structures from the federal proposal to alter access to the small business deduction, which threatens research, teaching, and specialized services. I would like to briefly expand upon 3 of these. First, we know that jurisdictions are struggling to meet the healthcare needs of our aging population. That is why the CMA is recommending new seniors' care funding be provided to the provinces and territories by means of a demographic top-up to the Canada Health Transfer. This needs-based funding would be delivered in addition to the Canada Health Transfer, which currently disadvantages jurisdictions with older populations. This fair method of distribution ensures there will be no losers, avoids opening up the funding formula, and may be delivered immediately. Second, the CMA was pleased to hear the federal government commit to providing more and better home and palliative care services. To deliver on this commitment, the CMA is recommending a targeted Home and Palliative Care Innovation Fund. This fund would encourage innovation in home care and help scale up best practices, the silos of excellence, such as the Briere Association, and address critical shortages. This fund would also support development of a much-needed national strategy for palliative and end-of-care life. Finally, I would like to take a few moments to discuss the federal proposal to alter access to the small business deduction. The CMA welcomed the Finance Committee's acknowledgement of the economics of medicine as a small business and your recommendation to maintain the incorporation framework for professionals. Despite the committee's recommendation, however, Budget 2016 introduced a proposal to alter access to the small business deduction. The CMA estimates that this change will affect nearly 15,000 physicians incorporated in group medical structures, mostly in teaching hospitals and universities. In doing so, this proposal will hinder medical research, training for the next generation of physicians, and patient access to specialized care. If the proposed changes are enacted, these partnerships will likely wither and die, as the federal government will be incentivizing solo practice over group practice. This concern was reaffirmed by a recent survey of physicians that found that over 60% would dissolve their group structures should this proposal go through, even though most of these group structures are within academic health science centers and were not formed for commercial or taxation purposes, but rather mandated by provincial negotiations. To avoid these unintended negative consequences, the CMA is strongly urging the federal government to exempt group medical structures from the application of this proposal. In summary, the CMA is offering 6 clear and actionable recommendations for the federal government to deliver on its commitment to invest in Canadians and support economic growth. I welcome any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Avery. Turning to the Chicken Farmers of Canada, Mr. Jansen, Chair, and Mr. Dungate, Executive Director. Floor is yours. Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for inviting us before you today to share our perspectives on the 2017 federal budget. Specific policy changes can help Canadian chicken farmers and the Canadian chicken industry grow our economic contribution and create more jobs to support Canada's middle class across this country from coast to coast. Chicken Farmers of Canada represents 2,800 farmers, and we work with our value chain partners that include 244 hatching egg farms, 40 hatcheries, 76 feed mills, and 191 processing plants. We take pride in the valuable contribution we make to Canada's rural and urban communities, while contributing $5.9 billion to Canada's GDP, sustain 78,000 jobs, and pay $2 billion in taxes. Our industry generates employment in farming, processing, veterinary work, transportation, retail, restaurants, and more. The chicken industry in Canada relies on the stability and predictability provided by supply management in order to maximize our contribution to the Canadian economy. This stability and predictability has been compromised by the persistent circumvention of Canada's importing rules. On October 5, 2015, the previous government announced its commitment to implement changes in order to address the losses that have been caused in our industry by increasing fraudulent imports over the past several years. Chicken Farmers of Canada requests that the federal government fulfill this commitment by implementing our 3 recommendations for reestablishing the integrity of the import control pillar. Our recommendations come at no cost to government. In fact, they will create more jobs, increase our contribution to GDP, and generate more taxes. Our first recommendation is to implement a mandatory certification for imports classified as spent fowl and use the DNA test to guarantee proper classification. Spent fowl are laying hens at the end of their production cycle, while broiler chickens are raised specifically for meat consumption. Broiler chicken is subject to import controls and spent fowl is not, meaning an unlimited amount can be imported. Yet a substantial volume of chicken broiler meat continues to be illegally imported into Canada, labeled as spent fowl. These illegal imports became noticeable in 2012, and so far in 2016, Canada has imported 114% of the United States' entire spent fowl breast meat production. This is impossible, of course, and points directly to import fraud. There is no means of visually distinguishing between broiler meat and spent fowl meat at the time of importation. With our support, Trent University developed a forensic DNA test that verifies whether a given product contains chicken, spent fowl, or a combination of the two. We recommend that this test serve as part of the mandatory spent fowl import certification verification process. Based on conservative estimates, 37 million kilograms of chicken was illegally imported as spent fowl in 2015, which is equivalent to 3.4% of our domestic chicken production. Our second recommendation is to exclude chicken from the duties relief and drawback programs. These programs were never designed for perishable agriculture goods such as chicken, meaning companies can take advantage of the program in order to circumvent import controls. Firstly, the programs provide a 4-year timeline to import, process, and re-export chicken, greatly exceeding the shelf life of frozen chicken products. In addition, product substitution is permitted, where high-value cuts can be imported, but the re-exported product can contain less valuable domestic cuts. Finally, unreported or misreported marinating, glazing, sizing, and yields result in less chicken being re-exported than was imported, with the difference being diverted into the domestic market. Imports through the duties relief program have increased exponentially over the past few years, reaching 96 million kilograms in 2015, representing more than 9% of our production. Chicken Farmers of Canada would like the government to make chicken ineligible under the Duties Relief Program. Companies can use the Global Affairs Canada pre-existing import to re-export program, a program specifically designed for goods like chicken. Our third recommendation is to reinstate into the customs tariff definition the sauce and cooking requirements of the specially defined mixtures as contained in Canada's WTO commitments. Chicken combined with as little as 13% of other ingredients is labeled as a specially defined mixture and is not considered chicken for import control purposes. Some companies have identified this as an opportunity to circumvent trade rules by adding sauce to a box of chicken wings or by creatively packaging two distinct products together. Chicken Farmers of Canada recommends that the Government of Canada reinstate the sauce and cooking requirements of the definition in the customs tariff. This reinstatement is fully consistent with our WTO and NAFTA obligations.
Dave, I'll have to cut you there. I think you're through all your recommendations according to my reading. Do you want to add one more point?
One paragraph to summarize, please. Implementing our three recommendations to stop illegal imports of chicken as spent fowl, to exclude chicken from the Duties Relief Program, and reinstate the sauce and cooking requirements into the customs tariff will create 4,500 new jobs, an additional $335 million to Canada's GDP, and generate $112 million in additional taxes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I suspect you'd be saying that would be contributing to economic growth. Turning then to the, thank you, gentlemen. Turning to the Federation of Acadian and Francophone Communities, Ms. Lanthe, President.
Oui, bonjour.
Good afternoon. Chair, committee members, I'd like to thank you for inviting the Federation of Francophone and Acadian Communities of Canada to present the priorities of Francophones living in minority communities in 9 provinces and 3 territories before the next federal budget. Created in 1975, the FCFA is the main spokesperson for 2.6 million French-speaking Canadian citizens living in as a minority in 9 provinces and 3 territories in the country. In the brief that we tabled in August, we presented 6 specific recommendations. Those are, including in the 2017 budget, funds for the next official languages plan, also including in the budget an increase in the support funding for Canadian heritage for Francophone organizations and institutions, support for training and skill development in French, put in place measures to promote employment for young Francophones, Francophone youth, to put in place a strategy to support Francophone community media, and put in place a national strategy for access to high-speed internet. We made these recommendations given their social, cultural, and economic value to the Francophone communities that we represent. Capacity building for organizations, infrastructure, services, and French language resources in our communities is essential if we want to ensure that these communities continue to be champions in promoting the use of the French language. When our organizations don't have the resources they need to meet increasing demand for French language services, our communities feel increasingly precarious. When French language daycares aren't available, our children go to daycare in English and then often to school in English. When our community radio stations and newspapers aren't able to go digital, thousands of Francophones need to turn to English language media to be informed on their community.
The social infrastructures in our communities, such as our cultural or community centers, are inadequate or lack of resources to offer French language programming. It's a missed opportunity for Canadians who have gone through French immersion to practice and experience the language in everyday life, and thus it's a missed opportunity for linguistic duality. Cela peut sembler gros, mais le message que je tiens.
This might seem obvious, but the message that I want to get across today is that supporting the vitality and development of French language communities, as required by the Official Languages Act, often goes through funding and investment that already exists. More specifically, the Government of Canada announced in the 2016 budget major investment in infrastructure, in digital infrastructure, in daycare, and in youth employment. These are major and appropriate priorities. However, If a program is open to everyone in both official languages, that doesn't mean that official language minority communities will receive any funding. An initiative that will help the majority doesn't always help the minority unless the government includes specific measures to help the minority. Let me give you an example. When it comes to an infrastructure investment, the Government of Canada generally deals with the provinces and territories or with municipalities. However, too often, because they are in a minority, our communities don't get the attention they need from the government. So, for us, infrastructure funding, that means, well, renovated community centers or French language daycare, which, as the Official Languages Commissioner mentioned again a couple of weeks ago, are greatly needed in many parts of the country. Or cellular coverage or high-speed internet doesn't always exist in communities like Port-au-Port in Newfoundland, a minority French language community. The federal government could make a real difference for our communities by revisiting investment in social infrastructure and by adding measures that are adapted to the realities of official language minority communities. For example, a small percentage of these investments could be directly invested in our communities through agreements between the federal government and our communities. As well, the government could create mechanisms for investments, for example, through the youth employment strategy, to ensure that youth in Francophone and Acadian communities benefit from that. The government needs to use different levers through different federal institutions to better support the vitality and the development of official language minority communities. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you very much. Turning then to the Canadian Mental Health Association, Ms. Gurnier and Mr. Smith.
Merci, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for inviting me here today. My name is Dr. Patrick Smith. I'm the National CEO of the Canadian Mental Health Association, Canada's most established mental health organization, on the cusp of our 100th year anniversary and with over 10,000 staff and volunteers in over 100 communities across Canada. I'm here to talk today about investing in evidence-based services and supports for the broad range of mental health problems and mental illness. Mental illness, including substance use disorders, which we've often overlooked and separated out in Canada, represent 6.7 million Canadians, 1 in 5. Before joining CMHA, as a clinical psychologist, I've worked in the hospital sector and the community-based sector in mental health. I worked with the BC government as the project principal for the development of their 10-year mental health and addiction plan and co-chaired the development of Canada's National Addiction Treatment Strategy. For both of these plans, we studied the plans and the investments of various other jurisdictions to better understand what the patient outcomes, the system outcomes, and population outcomes that resulted from various investments from a health, social, and economic perspective. Of all the G8 countries, Canada spends a lower percent of their total health spending on mental health, 7%, lower than any other. The next lowest is 9%. As the Mental Health Commission of Canada and as well as various other stakeholders have called for Canada to increase to 9%. We wouldn't be leading the pack. We would just be tied for the lowest. This historic lack of funding, the 2% gap, isn't just about a number, but the result has been that there are significant foundational gaps in our mental health response. Basic evidence-based services and supports that are foundational building blocks in systems around the world and other developed countries are fundamentally missing in Canada. Imagine, if you will, if we learned that across Canada there was wide disparity in access to educational continuum for kids. One town that only had 4th and 5th grade and nothing else. A town 100 kilometers away had only 1st grade and 8th grade. We wouldn't research the problem. We wouldn't have a strategy or a task force to figure out the problem. We would simply invest in a full developmental continuum of educational offerings. I'm happy to, I graduated with my PhD in clinical psychology in 1991 and had to demonstrate proficiency in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. It's an evidence-based treatment for many things, including depression, substance use disorder, anxiety. It's universally accepted as a gold standard of treatment. It's not new, but it's mostly not available in Canada unless you pay. It's just one example of the significant gap of the results of years of deferred maintenance on the mental health file. Other countries and jurisdictions have very recently been in the same boat and quickly turned it around. The UK is a great example of that. The young royals, Prince William, Kate, Prince Harry, have recently launched the Heads Together campaign. Their initiative recognizes that unmet mental health needs lie at the heart of some of their country's greatest social challenges. It's the same for Canada. And we know what we need to do to dramatically and relatively quickly change the landscape on this. But the first step is to accept the reality that has resulted from this deferred maintenance and demonstrate the leadership to address the problem. You have an electronic version of our brief. Our submission shows how mental health, including addictions, has a real impact on society. It shows that here in Canada, we have some way to go. I'll gladly speak to the details in the question period. However, I'd like to focus on key areas we believe would help ensure affordable, widely available, and effective mental health solutions for a greater number of Canadians. While other countries have had the same problems, they have demonstrated a whole-of-government approach. This isn't a healthcare issue alone. Here in Canada, we're seeing some encouraging signs that mental health deliverables are in 9 of the minister's mandate letters. Our hope is that the budget will provide the financial investment to support these deliverables, initiatives such as the Center of Excellence for Mental Health for Veterans and their families. We need to address the areas where the gaps are most significant, and this calls on all of us to respond to the mental health needs in Indigenous communities. We need to respond to the mental health aspects of truth and reconciliation. Prime Minister Trudeau has also shown leadership by announcing the federal government's intention to work with the provinces and territories on health accord to guide the future. The Honourable Jane Philpott at a recent roundtable on the health accord said, "Why can't 2017 be the year that we transform mental health funding in Canada?"
Patrick,
I'm happy to discuss the tiered model in the question and answer period.
I hate to interrupt, but there is a number of recommendations in your report that hopefully we can get to in the questions. My apologies for that. Canadian Red Cross, Mr. Sauvé.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Conrad Sauvé, I'm the CEO of the Canadian Red Cross. I'm going to talk to you today about emergency response in Canada. Je vais parler en anglais, mais je vais être là pour répondre aux questions en français.
I'll be speaking in English, but I'll be able to answer your questions in French.
Canadian Red Cross has been created by an Act of Parliament in 1909 as an auxiliary to the government for emergency measures. The Red Cross is not an NGO. And of course, through years, emergency response has become a pillar of our responses in Canada. We respond, although we're known for international responses, we respond every 3 hours to a disaster in Canada, from a basic personal disaster assistance to evacuations and floods and fires, or to a response like Lac Mégantic in terms of an explosion. And we do that because we have a network of over 5,000 volunteers trained as responders throughout the country, with agreements with 800 municipalities and every one of the provinces. But our preoccupation remains, as we look at the number of disasters are growing every year, the sizes of the responses are growing every year. So how are we prepared to respond to a major event in Canada? We've seen with Fort McMurray, where we've taken on the response on behalf of the provincial government to register and support 80,000 Canadians that were displaced from a city, the complexity of emergency response as they left not only within the province, but throughout the country, many of them heading back actually to Atlantic provinces. So how do we respond and support these Canadians everywhere? So what we're looking at as we go forward is preparing a response, a shared responsibility in the response to dealing with not just 80,000, but up to 200,000 Canadians in evacuation. And we say shared response because we are investing and responding, thanks to the support of Canadian public, with about $80 million a year in responses in Canada. So what we're looking at is actually 3 recommendations. One, to enhance our preparedness at the community level by increasing from 5,000 to 10,000 community responders. And it's not just about a response at the community level, it's the ability to pool resources in one place and one event. In the Saskatchewan forest fires, we brought in over 1,000 responders from the outside to support that specific response. Fort McMurray wasn't in the initial phases about Fort McMurray, it was about supporting the evacuees everywhere else. Technology is playing a key role in how we respond more and more. A reminder, in the first week of Fort McMurray, we raised $50 million. We use direct cash transfers to support everybody. And since we have everybody's emails, we dealt with their specific needs. So how we use technology in supporting people going forward. And the last part, of course, is our work with First Nations across the country. And we've put in a recommendation to increase in our partnership the training of 500 respondents within First Nations. So recent polls have shown that only 50% of Canadians are ready to deal with an emergency. These emergencies are growing. The amount the federal government and the provinces, as well as the municipalities, are spending on responding is increasing every year. So we're looking at this shared proposal going forward on behalf of supporting Canadians in these needs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Federation of Canadian Municipalities, Ms. Gannot and Ms. Lebois. Welcome.
Merci de nous entendre.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us today. I'm accompanied, as you said, by Alana Lavoie, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Manager for Policy. I am a councillor in Gatineau, and I am the second vice president of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. As many of you already know, the FCM is the national voice for local communities across Canada. Our approximately 2,000 member municipalities represent more than 91% of the Canadian population.
To discuss Phase 2 of the federal government's infrastructure plan. Phase 2 is a remarkable opportunity to transform this country, to create jobs, grow our economy, and improve the lives of Canadians. FCM understands that to address the challenges Canadians face in their daily lives, we need to invest in the places where Canadians live. Municipal leaders are natural partners in this work. Municipalities, after all, own roughly 60% of Canada's public infrastructures. We are an effective partners, too. Les collectivités locales.
Local communities have a solid experience in the efficient, fair, responsible, and transparent implementation of infrastructure projects. We have the necessary expertise in order to be able to decide which structural projects are those that will best meet the needs of our communities and will provide the best return on investment.
Has made bold commitments in transit, green, and social infrastructure. They're framing this as a project in nation building, and we agree. Community building is nation building. After all, it's in our communities where we tackle national challenges like climate change and job creations. So, how do we get there in Phase 2? First, Phase 2 should empower local governments to plan long-term and leverage local expertise to move the most cost-effective projects forward. Phase 1 set the right standards by choosing predictable, allocated-based investment, starting with transit. To ensure progress across Canada, Phase 2 should continue to empower local governments to act. Second, Phase 2 needs to get cost-sharing right. Par le passé, les ordres du gouvernement.
In the past, the various levels of government each contributed 1/3 of the cost of projects. Phase 1 acknowledged that once the construction was over, the burden of costs from throughout the life cycle of that new infrastructure would land on the municipalities' shoulders. They already have to deal with very tight budgets. The federal government therefore increased its contribution to 50% for certain projects, and that must continue.
To ensure that other supports, like financing through a federal infrastructure bank, are in addition to Phase 2 commitments. Third, building a stronger Canada means investing in communities of all sizes. Phase 2 must recognize that rural communities are central to Canada's economic, social, and environmental health. Building on the proven Small Communities Fund, a new rural infrastructure fund can provide targeted funding to rural priorities not fully addressed anywhere else in Phase 2. And fourth, in 2016, no serious nation-building plan can shortchange the housing. Last Friday, FCM published its comprehensive recommendations for the National Housing Strategy, a roadmap for ensuring that every Canadian can find a safe and affordable home. Notre analyse démontre.
Our analysis clearly shows that in order to deal with the housing crisis, $12.66 billion has to be carved out of the Social Infrastructure Fund in Phase 2 and allocated to housing specifically. The return on investment includes economic growth, lower costs for our health system and social services, as well as citizens who are able to fully contribute to their communities.
Designing a successful Phase 2 means building on Phase 1 and really unlocking the potential that already exists in our cities and our communities. So I'm here to tell you, on behalf of all the leaders across the 2,000 municipalities in Canada, we want a partnership to build tomorrow's Canada with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Turning to the C.D. Howe Institute, Mr. Loren, Miss Loren. Mr. Loren. There you are there. I'm looking at the wrong person. Go ahead.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. It's with great pleasure that I appear before you in order to participate in your pre-budget consultations.
And I'll switch to French towards the end, and I'll start by mentioning our pretty shadow budget. Oh, it's hard to put on camera. This is a document we publish every year around budget season here at the C.D. Howe Institute. It contains all of our pre-budget recommendations, and there's a lot of details in there, and the policies I'll present today are from this shadow budget, but since I only have a few minutes, I'll be presenting only on a few of these ideas. So basically today I'll be proposing three things. First, supporting labor mobility by eliminating regional differences in the employment insurance program. Second, supporting fiscal sustainability by tightly managing government's compensation costs. And third, expanding workforce participation by raising the age limit for tax-deferred retirement savings and by reforming the tax recognition for childcare costs. Recent very loud voices actually against free trade and immigration mean that Canada must continue to be a leading proponent for both free trade and immigration. But even here at home, we can help our workforce to face the competitive pressures of globalization by making sure that skills get to where they are most needed. In particular, regional differences in the EI program encourage the dependency for many workers and discourage migration. Longer benefit durations in areas with higher unemployment hurt the economy by subsidizing industries and places where the prospects for long-term stable jobs are relatively poor. So, the next budget should phase out EI's region-based entrance requirements and benefit durations. We should adopt coast-to-coast uniform requirements linked to the national unemployment rate, which would provide counter-cyclical income stabilization and encourage efficient migration of labor. Turning to another topic, we are faced with a low-for-long situation of lower growth and lower interest rates. Therefore, the next budget should take a cautious approach to budget balance and debt accumulation to make sure that the government would be able to respond appropriately in the event of a downturn in the economy, and thereby giving businesses the confidence they need to innovate and take risks. In particular, employee compensation per hour of work remains notably higher in the federal government than in most other industries in the economy, even higher than in industries requiring advanced qualifications, such as professional and scientific services or finance and insurance. So, in the next budget, containing employee compensation growth, in particular by limiting exposure to pensions and other future benefits, such as sick leaves, remain front and center. Finalement, beaucoup sont pris.
And finally, many are concerned about the equitable distribution of gains from trade abroad and innovation within society. The next budget must improve opportunities for all Canadians, specifically increasing the age limit for contributing to RRSPs and other plans would allow us to adapt to the higher life expectancy for those seniors who want to remain more active for longer on the labor market and within their communities. As well, an in-depth reform of tax provisions for the care of children would make the system more generous and would therefore encourage more parents to participate or go back to the labor market. That concludes my short remarks. I'd like to thank you for having given me the opportunity to speak before you today, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Have the shadow budget paper at some time as well. I'm not sure if it's on my iPad or not. Mr. McKinnon, 5 minutes, if we can hold it pretty tight.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We're going to be moving very quickly today. I apologize. But for the reasons given by the chairman, we need to do that. I'm going to start with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and I'd just like to point out to the councillor that she really represents her municipality well and with great vigor. Tomorrow we'll be hearing from Mr. Barton, and I'm certain that he will be speaking about his recommendations about the infrastructure bank. Now, you briefly dealt with this in your opening remarks, but I'd like to give you an opportunity to elaborate on the FCM's position with respect to the alternate funding of infrastructure projects. Well, thank you very much, Mr. McKinnon. On behalf of Canadian municipalities, I would say that obviously developing innovative tools is important. These types of tools can help us sustain infrastructure projects and meet the needs of future communities. So this is a very interesting topic, and we mustn't neglect the funding as proposed currently, regardless of how it's allocated. What we need to do is look at an infrastructure bank as another tool in our toolkit, something that municipalities can use to provide better service and a better quality of life to their citizens and to the public in general. So the FCM wants to make sure that the government considers improving the offer of services, whether it be through a tool like the infrastructure bank, but not to replace it with that necessarily. We don't necessarily want to prevent municipalities to undertake their current programming and to be able to finish projects that have already started. Thank you. Mr. Smith, I have a very quick question for you. Now, under the current health discussions that's taking place, there's been back and forth between provinces and the federal government. Do you think there should be conditions attached to the funding, whether it be mental health or any other health, for example, home health care or other topics?
Granger and myself were both at a health roundtable that the minister held, and it was unanimous. Everyone around the table, including Canadian Medical, Canadian Nursing, Canadian Home Care, Canadian Mental Health, we all think there needs to be leadership and direction. What we're saying is two things that we need. One is to transfer to the provinces the monies earmarked for mental health. And if it's not ring-fenced or earmarked, it won't happen. A psychologist would say best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. It isn't because provinces don't want to invest in mental health. It's never getting to the front line. And most of the provinces we've talked to behind closed doors are not that opposed to directed funding for mental health. But secondly, we're also asking the federal government to take a bold leadership approach, and that is to have dedicated mental health transformation fund. Because to close the gap, there needs to be systemic investment in some basic building blocks. Similar to the drug treatment funding program that Health Canada holds, this does call for direct funding directly to specific things, and you'll be able to tell Canadians exactly what you invested in and exactly what outcomes we can expect.
Merci, Monsieur Smith. Avec le temps qui me reste.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Now, with the time that's left, Ms. Lantier, why is it important to include in the 2017-18 budget funds for the follow-up on the roadmap that will be expiring in 2018? Well, it's a question of equal access to federal programs, because that would allow us to provide and develop services for Francophones. And from the perspective of official languages, it's very important to develop services for Francophones throughout the country. For instance, when it comes to infrastructure, there has to be federal investment in those infrastructure projects, and you mustn't simply say in the program that it's going to be done. There have to be measures that guarantee access to communities in certain areas to be able to apply, because they may not necessarily have equal support from their provinces. They don't necessarily have equal support from all governments, but their needs in daycare, their community needs, their digital needs, those needs exist. And what we want to do is be able to make sure that there's equal access to these funds.
Mr. Deltel.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, Mesdames, Messieurs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome to you all. Welcome to the House of Commons. I'm going to start with Vancouver. Mr. Lorrain from the C.D. Howe Institute. Good afternoon, Mr. Lorrain. Good afternoon. I just wanted to make sure that we could all hear each other. Mr. Lorrain, earlier you told us that we had to be cautious given the coming years, that we're never completely protected from risks. And the Governor of the Bank of Canada revised downwards his forecast for economic growth in Canada, and this also happened from the parliamentary budget officer who decided to, or who did say that comment on the surplus of the previous government. Now, I'd like to ask you about the impact of measures for small and medium-sized businesses. 3 weeks ago, there was the announcement of a new carbon tax that is going to be implemented much too quickly for certain investors and business people. We're debating C-26 in the House that will revise upwards a pension plan. And when I say upwards, I mean that the contribution of workers will be increased by about $1,000 per worker, and for businesses, $1,000 per employee. And then there will be also the same tax rate, 10.5 for small businesses, even though it was supposed to be reduced. So let's take these three factors together: the carbon tax, the new responsibility for the pension plan, and the tax rate on businesses. What impact do you think that will have on economic growth for our job creators, for the very foundation of our economic growth, that is to say small and medium-sized businesses? Well, that's a pretty big question, and it's difficult to speak to all the aspects of your question in only a few minutes. However, I would begin by saying that with respect to the lower tax rate for small businesses, there are two things to consider. Small businesses are a very diverse group. There are those who have strong growth. There are young businesses. There are those who invest a lot. And there are others that are more sort of small, sort of mom and pop kind of businesses that don't necessarily have growth objectives. And then there are other professionals who have incorporated. So there's quite a variety, a diversity of businesses. And all these businesses react differently to different incentives. Now, in terms of a lower tax rate for small businesses, Well, that's great for innovative businesses and for young businesses, those businesses that want to grow. But then for, say, incorporated professionals, perhaps it's good for the purposes of fiscal planning, but not necessarily for economic growth. And when you have these small family businesses as well, that's not necessarily a measure that's going to lead to economic growth. So you have to be careful. What could be done, and what we proposed already in the C.D. Howe Institute, is to better target this lower rate for businesses. So it should be targeted to young businesses, startup businesses, those who are investing and want to grow. So it needs to be better focused. And that kind of tax measure should be better targeted in order to be able to meet economic growth objectives. Thank you. And if we're going to help young startups with the higher burden in terms of the pension contributions as well as the carbon tax, do you think these are measures that are going to help these young, innovative businesses? Well, absolutely not. Now, in terms of those contributions to the pension plan, well, it's a fiscal measure that doesn't take into account profits. So these contributions can be harmful then for investments. And that's why when we look at these social contributions, we say that at times it can be harmful to society, actually. Now, in terms of the carbon tax, it depends on what's done with the dividends, how they're invested.
Merci.
Mr. Caron, I have very little time, so I'm going to have to speak very quickly. But to the Canadian Convenience Stores Association, we've often spoken about credit cards in the past. You referred to Bill C-236 from Linda Lapointe. Now, it's a very short bill. I could even read it right here. It's 2 paragraphs long. So it has to do with the credit card fees that cannot exceed a certain ceiling under regulation. And it also refers to governor and council being able to define the expression, the vocabulary, being able to also set ceilings. So if the government wants to, it can do something if it wants. That's basically what it is. And I don't think that's going to solve the situation. You have a situation that is very harmful for retailers, and they need to do more than that.
Main concern we had about Madame Lapointe's bill was that it didn't set the rates, and we wondered as well, similar to your question, whether or not that would mean, or what that would mean in the future when those rates would be established. What we like that we're hearing from the Finance Ministry now is that they're going to look at this and study it. Madame Lapointe's bill did not suggest that as well. So we, as an industry, we recognize the need for a vibrant credit card system in Canada. Our retailers want to see customers having access to debit. So ensuring that everyone is treated fairly in a resolution, I think, is very important. So having finance look at this now and study it in greater detail, we think will be a much better way to approach this issue.
Well, I look forward to that, except that I think that will entail a whole series of other consultations. Ms. Lantier, I was working for the Foundation in '91 for the Federation, and I'd like to ask you about internet and cell coverage in small, more remote Francophone communities. That isn't just a problem in Francophone communities. In Témiscouata, there are 8 out of 10 communities that do not have cell coverage at this point. Now, you've probably looked at the federal investment in internet technology, into cell coverage. Usually when the federal government and the previous government as well invests, it invests in the internet. So this is high-speed internet. And people forget cell coverage do you think that the federal government has to commit to working on the improvement of access to cell coverage in the same way that it's done with the internet? And how do you see that? Well, listen, I'm not an expert in access to the internet and cell coverage, so I don't know that I can give you an intelligent answer. However, what I can say is that in the communities we represent, in areas like the Yukon, the Northwest Territories, certain remote areas of Ontario and the Maritimes, there are problems when it comes to access to high-speed internet, as well as high costs to have access to these services. Sometimes it's prohibitively expensive. So there's the issue of equal access as well. And these have obviously an impact on the ability of schools to be able to do remote teaching. It has an impact on the economic development of communities. So all of that is a reality in these communities. And as we all know, cell phones are used everywhere all the time. And we can't just look at the internet issue without also looking at access to cell coverage. Thank you very much. I have so many questions, Mr. Lorrain, but I'm going to start with one. You've probably looked at public policy and the history of public policy, as well as the Canada Pension Plan. Now, what we seem to be hearing now, including from my colleague, are the same arguments that we've heard for a while. For example, when the program was improved in the 1990s in order to deal with the long-term situation. And these are the same arguments that we probably even heard in 1960, 1965 when the pension plan was created. So every time we're talking about a plan like that, the same concerns are raised, and obviously those concerns have to be addressed and considered. But to say things like these will be disastrous for businesses, those same arguments were made in the 60s and in the 90s. Well, I can comment on that. Now, I'm not saying that the new CPP, that CPP2, will destroy the economy. Obviously, it's going to have an impact on the economy. And there are other aspects to CPP2 that we need to consider. What are the needs? Does it actually meet the needs that are there? I think that's a question that hasn't been fully answered. Yes, needs have been studied and examined. There are many studies, and most studies identify needs within a very specific category of workers, let's say middle and upper income, and even a subclass of those. But the CPP is for everyone. It's an obligatory plan. So if you ask me, and if you ask me about what I've written, well, I don't think the CPP does enough for those who really need it. And it's not being properly targeted for the majority of the public, many of whom don't need it. So I think the work could have been done. There could have been much better work done.
Obviously, time is truncated today, so I'll try to be quick. On the Canadian Medical Association, on your brief, Canadian Mental Health Association, apologies. I think you used the word directed funding for dollars that need to be invested in mental health. In another presentation, we heard the word ring fencing those dollars. What is your view on that? Because I think it's very important. I've been to a men's sauna. I've been to about 3 or 4 events on mental health issues in the last 2 weeks, and it's amazing. It's troubling, but it's amazing.
Mm-hmm. It's because of the years of deferred maintenance, and this isn't pointing fingers. Many countries have found themselves in the same position over the years. The gap between what we know we need and what we have is so significant that a transformation fund that we're talking about needs to be held centrally to specifically invest in the building blocks that we need in the country. Secondly, since every province has been working on their own mental health plans, the transfer of monies that is earmarked and ring-fenced so that it's dedicated to spending on mental health. At the Health Roundtable, there was a concern that sometimes the Canadian health transfer doesn't even get spent on health. if it doesn't get spent on health, and even if it does, the evidence suggests that it doesn't get spent on mental health. And this fix is so significant, and it's also going to be economically important for our country to do that.
Thank you. To the Mental Health Association, dealing with the small business deduction, I'd like to, if you can elaborate for 30 seconds on the implications of that legislation, please.
Thank you. A couple of observations first. The Canadian Medical Association does not negotiate and does not represent doctors financially. We're presenting this issue as a health risk to Canada's health system. We're very pleased to see responsible tax policy, and we're pleased that the budget recognized physicians as an economy, a strong economy within Canada. What the issue is has some complexity, and it is around the group medical structures. And these structures are put together by provinces and imposed upon physicians in universities and in teaching hospitals, so that specialized services, research, and teaching can be supported. So the doctors actually don't have an option. They have to join a structure like this. What the proposed legislation does is make the small business deduction applicable to the group as a whole, so one deduction, rather than each individual physician within that group. What that does is means that the 6% or so of money from the dedicated funding the provinces supply goes into a pot so that we can support that research and teaching, which is not otherwise paid, or at least not significantly paid. So if these structures are dissolved, our surveys of our physicians who are affected in that way indicate that at least 60% of those doctors will eventually leave those structures, and that will significantly impair teaching, research, and specialized services.
Thank you, sir. And one question for FCM, the $12.66 billion ask. In that, with, say, for TCHC, the largest rental, Toronto Community Housing Corporation, you get a backlog of repairs. Is that $12 billion ask for a completely new build, or does that include the operating system on the operating costs on a year-by-year basis, so we don't get into a situation where a housing authority has a huge backlog of expenses and repairs in 2 or 3 years out?
Thank you. The $12.66 billion is spent over 10 initiatives that encompasses keeping the agreements that are coming to end to be able to keep our buildings in good livable conditions. Also on building rental units, being able to afford also sustainable and affordable housing. So $5 billion in repairs and maintenance on social existing, $3 billion to keep housing affordable, $4 billion for new affordable housing, and $700 million for portable housing allowance. And just an idea of the breakout of the $12.6 billion.
Thank you both. Mr. Leipert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Sauvé, I don't have a question for you, but my colleague, Mr. Albateyev, and I are members of Parliament from Alberta, and I think I speak on behalf of probably all of my colleagues here just to thank the Red Cross for all the great work that was done during the Fort McMurray timeframe. I know that it was like you just didn't hear anybody complaining about how the Red Cross handled it. So congratulations to your organization for just a tremendous job well done. I am going to ask, though, both the Canadian Convenience Store Association and the Chicken Farmers of Canada. I'm not going to repeat the question that my colleague, Mr. Deltel, asked the C.D. Howe Institute, but I would be interested in getting your responses to I presume you heard the question that Mr. Deltel asked, but in a nutshell, how does the sort of piling on of all of these taxes, whether it's increases in CPP contributions, whether it's a carbon tax, whether it's the failure to reduce the small business tax as promised, or in Alberta's case, increases to minimum wage. Give us a sense of how these impact your organizations, and how does that contribute to growing the economy in the country?
Very good question. Any cost increase for small business retailers creates a difficult situation for them to remain competitive and to succeed. So we certainly are concerned about all of the areas you're discussing. We do recognize that there is need for some of these things as well, and we're hoping that our industry will be consulted when they come about so that we have an opportunity to express those concerns and to understand how it may impact us. But yes, it certainly has us concerned.
Thank you. Mr. Jansen, could you give us your thoughts?
Well, certainly we'd want to see a carbon tax would be implemented, that it would be consistent across the country. As you heard, we have chicken production in all 10 provinces. Even though our footprint offers a very low impact in terms of greenhouse gases, we are a significant user of natural gas. And so in answer to your question, this would definitely increase our production costs, especially in the colder climates.
I got a little time left. I'll let my colleague, Mr. Albateyev, ask a question.
Just a couple of quick questions. One for the, and by the way, thank you all for your presentations. For the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, you're proposing $12.6 billion, and that's a very significant amount for affordable homes or affordable housing. You are, as a municipality, you're an authority. So how much the municipalities are doing on their own, within their own jurisdiction, to put more of these affordable homes?
Well, depending on where we are in Canada, because different municipalities are under different provincial jurisdiction, but we are well positioned to know the needs in our municipalities as far as housing, social housing, and occupancy rate, and all of those are addressed in the submission we did to the National Housing Policy. In some jurisdiction, municipalities also do invest in complementarity with the federal government and the provincial government, and also in local organizations on the ground that are required also to invest in infrastructures to be able to house different people and the certains, I'm looking for my words in English, des certaines communautés fragilisées.
There are certain precarious communities. So in brief, the services offered to a population to meet the housing need, whether it be for affordable housing, social housing, or to deal with homelessness, well, that a lot of that responsibility is with the municipalities, and the funding from the federal government in cooperation with provincial municipalities can make a very big difference in the lives of Canadians, and for the municipality to be able to offer to all citizens affordable, adequate housing, safe housing for all. You know that 1.5 million Canadians right now need to spend over 30% of their income on housing, and that's absolutely unacceptable. And without adequate funding from all levels of government, the housing crisis cannot be addressed and will not be fixed in Canada. I think that that's essential in the services that we need to offer to all Canadians.
Thank you all. We'll have to end it there. I thank everyone for their presentations and trying to stick to a very tight time frame. We will suspend for 5 minutes and have a mad rush 5-minute shuffle, I guess. Meeting suspended. Could we come to order? Then I think we have all our panelists up, right? So welcome to the second panel. As you know, we're doing pre-budget consultations in advance of the 2017 budget. We're trying to emphasize economic growth as the theme. And just to report to this panel group, in case you weren't here before, we are under a very tight time frame. We do have to depart here at no later than 5:45 for a vote in the House of Commons. So I apologize for that in advance. So we will hold everyone to 5 minutes time frame, so you may end up having to sum up pretty quick. Starting then with the Canadian Union of Public Employees, Mr. Sanger, welcome.
Welcome. I know, Mr. Chair and honourable members, I know you've had many long weeks of hearings, and so on behalf of 640,000 CUPE members who work hard to deliver quality public services in communities all across Canada, I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here. We submitted a brief in August, and I'll summarise our main recommendations. The average pay of our members is about $42,000 a year, and without quality public services, they could barely survive. Because of continued austerity, CUPE members' base wages will increase by an average of just 1.5% this year and next. Average base increases for all unionized workers have been below 2% every year since 2009. You heard on Monday from the Governor of the Bank of Canada about how expectations for economic growth have declined. Next week, we'll hear something similar from the Finance Minister. So when household spending accounts for about 2/3 of our economy, but workers' wages continue to be repressed, should there be any wonder why the economy isn't growing any stronger? We don't need more tax cuts or subsidies for corporations that already have over $700 billion in cash they aren't investing in the economy. We also don't need more trade deals that expand the powers of large multinational corporations and undermine workers' wages and our sovereignty in different ways. We do need more and better quality jobs with decent wages and benefits in a diversified and sustainable economy. In other words, inclusive growth. We also need improved public services and public infrastructure supported by fairer taxes and not further privatization. We need to increase workers' wages, but we also need to increase the social wage that all Canadians receive through public education, healthcare, pensions, and other public services. One of our top priorities should be to establish and fund an affordable, quality public early childhood education and care system with professional childcare workers. This could pay for itself in fiscal and economic terms, promote equality, and generate hundreds of thousands of jobs. A new health accord should provide significant increases in funding strictly tied to improvements and expansion of public health care, including a national pharmacare program, expansion of publicly provided continuing care and primary health care, and additional support for mental health. We support reducing and ultimately eliminating undergraduate and college tuition fees. Half of the cost of this could be paid for by eliminating federal education tax credits and loan-based financial assistance. We also need more support for literacy and essential skills. The Green Economy Network's proposals to invest billions more annually in public transportation, renewable energy, and energy efficiency could generate 1 million person-years of good green jobs over the next 10 years. Climate change plans should also include just transition measures to ensure that vulnerable workers, industries, and communities are assisted. The federal government has shown leadership on a national minimum carbon price. This could provide enough revenue to pay for these additional investments and offset the hardship for those most affected. We support increased funding for public infrastructure in the government's priority areas, but more should be done to ensure that it achieves the greatest social, economic, and environmental return on investment and creates decent jobs for all Canadians. Federally funded projects should meet a platform of social, ethical, and ethical standards, including provision of decent wages, labor rights, pay equity, representative workforces, apprenticeships, and high standards of corporate responsibility, including payment of taxes. Public infrastructure should be publicly financed and operated. The P3 fund and PPP Canada should be eliminated, with funding redirected to public infrastructure projects. We oppose the Advisory Council on Economic Growth's proposal for an infrastructure bank. These would mean much higher costs for private finance and cannibalize our public infrastructure for private profit. The public would ultimately pay these higher costs directly through higher user fees and indirectly through higher payments from and lower revenues to governments. Experts such as Madi Simiatiki have proposed much better suggestions for a national infrastructure bank that would reduce costs and increase accountability and transparency. Lastly, we need progressive tax reform. Priorities here include closing regressive tax loopholes, taxing income from capital at the same rate as income from labor, increasing corporate tax rates, cracking down on tax evasion and avoidance, and ensuring that large multinational digital economy corporations such as Uber and Netflix and others pay their fair share of tax. Thank you, and I very much welcome your questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sanger, and for all present, we do have your submissions on the mobile units. Canadian Climate Forum, Ms. Laframboise.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and honourable members, for this opportunity. Canadians are facing a climate urgency. Natural disasters are ever increasing in frequency and intensity. Think of Hurricane William and Fort McMurray as recent examples. There are ever increasing needs and costs to protect Canadians from these disasters. International commitments on climate are helping drive our low carbon economy. It is an exciting time and a new way of doing business, but time is not on our side and global warming waits for no one. The Canadian Climate Forum is unique in Canada. We are the only national, independent, apolitical agency that addresses all climate issues across all sectors and jurisdictions. We've built upon our distinguished past as the foundation, and today focus on the science to policy interface to drive best strategies and policies. Our network is deep. It's Canada's leading climate scientists, academics, as well as a wide range of others from sectors industry, economy, health, sociology, NGOs, national centers of excellence, and so on. Our approach is to break down silos, form strategic partnerships to enrich expertise and avoid wasteful duplication, and convene across sectors and issues. A recent example of how we operate is our symposium that was just last week, national and international, entitled Moving Towards Sustainable Energy. Every sector of the climate spectrum was represented, and our world-class speakers included Minister Catherine McKenna, Minister Jim Carr, Elizabeth May, Chris Reagan, Dominic Barton, Paul Booth, and Dr. Mark Jackard. We also had a blue ribbon panel of clean tech CEOs, and this came at a request from Mr. Jim Basili. These clean tech CEOs said very clearly to the room that policies are lacking for us to do our business in this country, to scale up, and to keep jobs here. We've been listening to bureaucrats for the last 10 months and listening carefully. Personally, I've met with over 70 since January, and we hear the consistent message. They are under huge pressure, and they need help with developing climate policy for adaptation and mitigation. Mitigation is new to many, and integration, while it is embraced, is a cultural shift, and it's taking time, and it's time that really there isn't much of. Recently, we completed a contract with Public Safety Canada, emergency management. We were asked to develop a national inventory and engagement strategy of stakeholders who are absent from the discussions underway for a national emergency management plan for disasters. And because of the forum's network and expertise, we were able to produce a 43-page report in a matter of weeks, identified over 200 stakeholders whose voices have not been heard to date, and designed an engagement strategy that public safety can implement immediately with a range of cost options. Two other major areas that we heard from senior bureaucrats that lack help and knowledge is in the north, particularly engagement on traditional knowledge issues and First Nations, major infrastructure challenges, thawing permafrost, sea level rise, snow and ice loss, and disruption of traditional way of life. And lastly, another main theme that appeared across different ministries is data. There is a massive and major lack of standardized data in this country and guidelines, driving everything from flood mapping to snow load guidelines to projections for agriculture practices. How can Canada build back better or build new without the best evidence? In the private sector, which was the second part of our request in our submission, there is a major gap in the private sector's voice in public policy in this country related to climate change. Every department we met with told us that they would value an opportunity to have regular dialogue with CEOs in this country, and nobody is doing that, and the forum would like to be the one. We have recommended a business roundtable for climate resiliency, similar to the National Roundtable on Environment Economy that disappeared, but much broader and more integrated. We also proposed to house Arise Canada, which is the UNISDR's Disaster Risk Reduction International Initiative. Arise Canada just launched in October in Toronto, but there is no secretariat. And I want to make it clear that the funding we ask for is not to sustain the secretariat, it's to launch it and to get it going. And we see that 12 to 24 months would be plenty of time to have private sector funding to have the roundtable continue on. This is a win-win. We have Public Safety Canada and other ministries hosting the World Regional Platform on Disaster Risk Reduction next March, so you could announce that as a government initiative, and it would be a voice for government to go to for industry input. And just to close, there is an urgency for knowledge and climate advice. It's a whole-of-society approach that will involve every sector and multitudes of stakeholders, and the forum is here to serve this government. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have those figures and those monies in the brief, I note. Mr. Conference for Advanced Life Underwriting, Mr. Blatt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and committee members for the opportunity to be here today with you. I'm Warren Blatt, and in addition to being an independent financial advisor, I'm a member of the CALU Board of Directors as well as chair of its Government Relations Committee. CALU and our sister organization Advocates represent approximately 11,000 insurance and financial advisors who in turn provide financial advice to millions of Canadians. CALU appreciates this opportunity to comment on behalf of our members and their clients on two recommendations contained in its 2017 pre-budget submission. By way of background, it is readily apparent that the boomer generation has had and will continue to have a significant socio-economic impact in Canada. Notably, the first boomers turned 65 years of age in 2011. And over the next 20 years, this group will expand the number of Canadians over the age of 65 to 23% of the population. As Canadians age and retire, two of their greatest concerns are receiving quality health care and cultivating their personal savings. It is therefore critically important that all levels of government focus on encouraging Canadians to save and invest in order to be more financially self-sufficient during their retirement years. By doing so, this will also reduce reliance on public programs and institutional support. The current and previous governments have taken important actions in this area, including the reduction in the RIF minimum factors that took effect in 2015, and the recently announced enhancement to the Canada Pension Plan. These modifications will help Canadians retain more of their savings, increase future retirement benefits, and protect them from the longevity risk. With a significant portion of the Canadian population moving into the retirement years, advancing age will drive a corresponding need for increasing long-term care services. The C.D. Howe Institute recently released a report which estimated that the total cost of long-term care will more than double to $140 billion over the next 20 years. The C.D. Howe report concluded that the provinces will need to shift more of the cost of long-term care to those that can afford to pay. This will be an additional retirement financial burden that most Canadians are not currently planning or prepared for. CALU believes that the long-term care insurance can play an important role in helping address this funding gap. Long-term care insurance provides a cash allowance to individuals who are unable to manage the activities of daily living. Greater ownership of this type of insurance is critical in helping to manage private costs associated with long-term care services. CALU therefore urges the federal government to continue to take a leadership position in preparing Canadians for what lies ahead. This can be achieved by educating Canadians about their financial obligations relating to long-term care services, by working with the provinces to develop a more unified approach to determine who qualifies for subsidized access, and by enacting tax rules that will encourage more Canadians to own individual long-term care insurance. CALU's second recommendation relates to the impact of the aging population on business owners who have built successful family businesses. Small businesses play an important role in the Canadian economy, extremely important role, making a significant contribution to the employment and economic activity of the country. However, it is estimated that close to 75% of current business owners will sell or exit their businesses in the next 10 years, and many may want to pass on their businesses to family members. Unfortunately, existing tax rules can penalize the owner of incorporated businesses who transfer shares to a corporation controlled by other family members. A similar transaction involving an arm's-length purchaser would not result in the application of these rules. As a result, a business owner may be forced to sell their business outside of the family to preserve more after-tax proceeds to fund their retirement income. CALU supports the call for other interested stakeholders to review and amend these rules to permit the transfer of incorporated small businesses to the next generation of family owners on a more tax-neutral basis. We believe this action will facilitate the successful transfer of family businesses and in turn protect local jobs generated by these companies. I thank you for your time and attention. Of course, I'm pleased to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blatt. With the Green Budget Coalition, Mr. Eiterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, honorable committee members. Thank you for inviting the Green Budget Coalition to speak to you today. The Green Budget Coalition, or GBC, is unique in bringing together the expertise of 17 of Canada's leading environmental organizations, collectively representing over 600,000 Canadians, and ranging from Ducks Unlimited to Greenpeace. Our mission is to present an analysis of the most pressing issues regarding environmental sustainability in Canada, and to make a consolidated annual set of recommendations to the federal government regarding strategic, fiscal, and budgetary opportunities. The GBC appreciated the funding in Budget 2016 for many of its priorities, including the Low Carbon Economy Fund, marine protected areas, green infrastructure in First Nations communities, and tax benefits for electricity storage technologies. However, much more is still needed to put Canada on a solid path towards environmental sustainability and playing a responsible role in addressing climate change. I would like to highlight the Green Budget Coalition's key recommendations for Budget 2017. They include a suite of measures to achieve Canada's climate change mitigation and adaptation objectives and related nature conservation objectives and freshwater programs. In particular, the Green Budget Coalition recommends taking action to implement a well-designed pan-Canadian carbon price, starting at a price level that respects the social cost of carbon, with appreciable annual increases for several years and with revenues directed towards compensating low-income and other vulnerable individuals and families, supporting emission reductions and clean economic growth, and supporting adaptation to climate change, including natural solutions. We welcome the Prime Minister's announcement regarding a carbon price as an important step forward. We have two key concerns, one being that it will be many years before the price level is significant enough to significantly reduce emissions, and the second being that we would have preferred an incremental $10 per ton increase until 2030 with annual reviews every 5 years so that we did not get stuck in inertia, which seems to be happening in British Columbia. The GBC also recommends phasing out exploration and development subsidies to the fossil fuel industry, which is effectively work against the effectiveness of a carbon price and whose elimination have strong public support. We recommend directing 30% of green infrastructure funding to natural infrastructure options, such as wetlands and coastal strengthening, and 10% of annual funding from the Pan-Canadian Framework on Clean Growth and Climate to help Canada's ecosystems adapt to climate change. We recommend taking strategic, nationwide, multi-year conservation action in 3 areas: expanding and better protecting our terrestrial protected areas system, expanding measures to conserve unique and ecologically significant wildlife habitat and to ensure ecological connectivity, and to fulfill Canada's commitments to reach and exceed international marine protection targets and to ensure ocean health and sustainable fisheries. In this area, we're also supportive of the Guardians proposal from the Indigenous Leadership Initiative. And we support renewing important freshwater programs that are sunsetting in March 2017 regarding Lake Simcoe and Georgian Bay, and invest in the quality, comprehensiveness, and accessibility of freshwater monitoring data. We've been engaging in a series of meetings over the past month with deputy ministers and finance officials regarding our preliminary recommendations for next year's budget, and we'll be issuing a final version late in mid-November, and would welcome the opportunity to meet with you then. Our final document will include a number of complementary recommendations across issues of climate change mitigation and adaptation, energy, transit, nature conservation, radon mitigation, and measuring ecological goods and services. We are also supportive of the Assembly of First Nations proposals for reducing diesel use in Indigenous communities and for clean energy funds. I thank you very much for your time and attention, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. With the Macdonald Laurier Institute, Mr. Cross, Senior Fellow, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to summarize a paper in macroeconomics that will be released shortly by the Macdonald Laurier Institute. Almost all economic analysts agreed the necessity of adopting extraordinary monetary and fiscal stimulus at the worst of the recession 2008-2009. However, few at the time imagined such stimulus would be maintained and even augmented 9 years after the onset of the crisis. A growing number of analysts and organizations, including the Bank for International Settlements, are critical of maintaining such stimulative fiscal and monetary policies for such an extended period of time. These reservations center on whether the negative impacts of stimulative policies on long-term potential growth exceed their short-term benefits, whether the short-term benefits even exist anymore, and whether the risks they cultivate in the global financial system threaten to aggravate the turmoil they were originally designed to redress. Briefly, there are two types of macroeconomic policies: cyclical policies aimed at bringing an economy out of recession or cooling off an overheating economy, and structural policies like trade to boost long-term growth potential. These two types of policies, cyclical and structural, are often in opposition to each other. The dynamics of growth in the long run are different and often the opposite of the determinants of growth in the short run. Containing inflation involves slower growth in the short term, which is tolerated because lower inflation boosts the long-term potential of the economy. Policies designed to stimulate the economy in the short term, such as budget deficits, dampen long-term potential growth. Policymakers accept this trade-off because the harmful social and economic effects of recession are worth minimizing even at the cost of somewhat lower growth in the longer term. Conversely, policies that boost long-term growth potential often dampen growth in the short term, such as moves to increase labor market efficiency or liberalize trade. In the words of Robert Schiller, we must therefore consider the short run and the long run separately, and the policy responses to the two are very different. As William White, former Deputy Governor of the Bank of Canada and Chief Economist at the BIS, observed, the long run is not just a series of short runs. Because of their harm to long-term potential growth, counter-cyclical policies should only be implemented for short periods of time. That policies designed to stimulate the economy are harmful for the long-term trend of growth is demonstrated by how nobody advocates ultra-low interest rates, quantitative easing, or budget deficits throughout the business cycle. These policies are continued extraordinary medicine only to be administered when the economy is faltering and needs stimulus. They were not meant to address persistently slow growth, which is increasingly what they're being asked to do. Chronically slow growth reflects structural forces, notably low productivity gains, which can only be addressed by structural reforms. Most macroeconomic stimulus policies inhibit productivity growth. At the worst, they encourage excessive debt growth that results in unstable financial conditions and a prolonged and severe slump in the economy. The main argument of this brief is that the damage to long-term potential growth from nearly a decade of extraordinary measures has outweighed their usefulness for some time. They have failed to return growth to normal rates and have reduced the long-term potential growth rate of the economy. The constant stimulus applied to most advanced economies may even plunge the global economy back in recession by increasing the financial system's exposure to risk via either asset price bubbles or destabilizing international capital flows. Beyond damaging long-term potential growth, there are reasons to believe monetary and fiscal policies are exhausting their ability to stimulate growth in the short term. These diminishing returns partly reflect, after years of stimulus, that there is little spending left to shift from the future to the present. As the BIS observed, tomorrow eventually becomes today. As well, both monetary and fiscal policy is reaching the absolute limits of stimulus, particularly as we approach the zero interest rates in North America. There are clear implications of this line of analysis for the new normal thesis that the Western world is mired in an era of slow growth due to weak demand and the aging of the population. An alternative view, as laid out by the BIS, is that the protracted slump in growth reflects the dulling impact of monetary and fiscal policies adopted in response to the 2008 crisis and since amplified as the recovery has sputtered. As the years have passed, these economic chickens have come home to roost in the form of structurally lower potential growth. Worse, the possible formation of bubbles in several asset markets raises the possibility of another financial crisis for which policymakers will have fewer tools than in 2008.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cross. Turning to Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada, welcome Mr. Gallant, an often visitor to PEI, I know. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I am Greg Gallant, and I'm a member of the board of the Chartered Professional Accountants of Canada, also known as CPA Canada, and a partner with Grant Thornton in Toronto. Let me start by stating the obvious. We are in a long period of low growth in Canada and in most advanced economies. However low it may be, economic growth matters. The pursuit of policies and investments that will spur growth and support social development is the aim of this budget process. It is also CPA Canada's desire to play a role in helping the government achieve growth for the benefit of Canadians. Before I share a few of our recommendations for Budget 2017, let me tell you about our organization. CPA Canada serves as the national and international voice for Canada's more than 200,000 chartered professional accountants who work at home and abroad. CPAs are in executive, finance, business, and accounting roles in the private and public sectors. There can be no doubt that the tax system plays a critical role in Canada's economic growth and the prosperity of our citizens. Canada's tax system has become complex, unfair to some, and costly to comply with and administer. Major national organizations, including CPA Canada, as well as the economists, academics, and think tanks, have all called for a comprehensive review of Canada's tax system. Canada has not had a thorough review of its tax system for over 50 years. And consider how much has changed since 1966. It's time for change. That is why CPA Canada applauds this committee for passing a motion to undertake a comprehensive review of the Income Tax Act and the Canadian tax system and prepare a report. In our pre-budget submission, we outlined the principles and outcomes necessary to guide this tax review. Canada needs a 21st century tax system, a simple, predictable, fair, efficient, and transparent tax system. We need low, internationally competitive tax rates where everyone pays their fair share so that all Canadians prosper. We urge the committee to launch its study at the earliest opportunity so that your recommendations can be considered for the next federal budget. We look forward for the opportunity to contribute to the committee's work on this review. Time does not permit us to speak on all policy recommendations in our submission, including the importance of strong fiscal management, responsible investments in infrastructure that focus on long-term sustainable goals, integrating internationally trained professionals in the workforce quickly, strengthening financial literacy, and continue innovating and adapting so that Canada maintains its enviable quality of life. However, I will speak briefly on the last point concerning innovation and climate change adaptation. First, on innovation, we recommend the government implement a patent box, enhance the SHRED tax credit program, and adopt standardized business reporting. The government's focus on innovation is most welcome for its potential to improve Canada's productivity. Too often, the discussions of innovation involves largely around research and development. We think Canada must seriously look as to how to boost demand for Canada's innovations, target high-potential firms, focus on human resources, and create a business landscape that encourages firms to invest and commercialize their innovations. Secondly, regarding climate change, we are encouraged by the government's commitment to transition to a low-carbon economy through its pan-Canadian framework. CPAs are helping businesses to manage that transition and to adapt to climate-related impacts which are so costly to our economy and society. For these reasons, we recommend the government build on its leadership role and develop a national adaptation plan that engages all affected stakeholders, including the private sector. CPA Canada appreciates this opportunity to provide the accounting profession's views and recommendations on public policy issues that contribute to inclusiveness and sustainable growth. We welcome your comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gallant. Turning to two video conference presentations. First with the Forest Products Association of Canada, video conference from Vancouver. Mr. Nyber, floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks for the flexibility. Although based in Ottawa, I was touring the Port of Vancouver today, and I think if we need a reminder about how critical infrastructure is to the future growth of our economy, I'd encourage anybody who hasn't had the opportunity to tour the port, because it really impressed me today on how important critical infrastructure is. It's a challenging time in Canada's forest sector, and it's got me to think about the challenges of the last decade in the sector. And I'm reminded about how far we've come and how innovation is in our DNA. Our industry has faced many challenges in the past, but our focus on innovation in products, including market diversification, productivity, evolving forest management practices is at our core. We have a track record of innovation and continually adapt our operations and practices to meet the demands of changing global markets and consumer preferences. Partnerships are at the heart of what we do. The forest product sector has been at the heart of the Canadian economy, with 230,000 direct jobs and 1 million indirect jobs in communities where increasingly, or I would say in a big way, our mills and our forest families are really the backbone of these local communities. Our sector is one of the largest employers of Indigenous peoples in Canada, and we're proud to say that we have 1,400 Indigenous-owned forest businesses across the country. We're the third largest manufacturing industry and lead the greenest workforce in Canada. Our industry also has the best environmental reputation in the world, achieved by embracing strong environmental standards and committing to continuous improvement. We were one of the first sectors to launch our climate change challenge and our commitment to deliver 13% of the government's overall target in terms of carbon mitigation, carbon reduction. So the forest sector, in your presentation, you'll see clearly mapped out a few of the things that we believe are important for the committee and Minister Morneau to consider. Firstly, investments in science networks. We innovate through collaboration, partnerships, and science networks with government, business, and academia. Long-term and stable investments in private-public partnerships such as FP Innovations, research and development projects, business clusters will strengthen Canada's innovation capacity. And we're recommending that the federal government renew FP Innovations core funding of $100 million over 4 years. FPAC also recommends that the federal government invest $100 million over 4 years for fundamental and applied science networks related to industry, in addition to $40 million over 4 years for business clusters. Innovation Minister Navdeep Bains has said that the government is betting heavily on networks or innovation clusters as part of the innovation agenda, and we believe he is right to do so. On commercialization and the adoption of clean technology, Canada's forest sector is a global leader in adopting new technology and embracing clean technology. The government's support for commercialization of clean technologies is vital if our sector is to remain competitive. We are recommending that the government support commercialization of advanced wood products, bioproducts, and clean tech with $200 million over 4 years through the Investments in Forest Industry Transformation Program. And I'd like to talk about more of that program in Q&A if I can, because it's been really, really successful in the past. That program is set to expire in 2018, but we believe it should be renewed because for every dollar that was invested in IFIT under the previous government, $2.60 was generated in return. Further, we believe the government should support subsequent replication of technology across the forest products industry under the Clean Resources Initiative with a $250 million investment over 4 years to address our sector's unique needs. Government support can accelerate technology and innovation replication and ensure that Canada's forest sector keeps pace with international competition in the widespread adoption of clean technology. And that will also contribute to helping us tackle climate change. And finally, I'd like to mention the importance of closing gaps in market access. The government could take action on a number of fronts to ensure that businesses in our industry are meeting expansion, innovation, and prosperity goals to better contribute to economic growth. For example, updating building codes and standards to incorporate the consideration of the carbon footprint and renewing the Expanding Market Opportunities Program and funding for Canada Wood. FPAC members are diversifying into higher value niche areas like bioenergy, biochemicals, nanotechnology, and advanced construction materials, and more than ever, this kind of innovation is fundamental to improving our competitiveness in the global marketplace. So, Mr. Chair, in conclusion, strategic investments in the forest sector in Budget 2017 to support better investments in science networks and business clusters, commercialization and adoption of clean tech, and closing gaps in market access will contribute to Canada's economic growth and modernize how we innovate as a country. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks again for your time today.
Thank you very much, and we do have a brief on mobiles. With the Canadian Council of Refugees, Lolly Rico, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you for the invitation. And through the Canadian Council for Refugees, we are 180 organizations. That among them, we have private sponsorship groups, settlement agency, community groups, lawyers, and that they work with immigrants and refugees. And we want to say thank you for this invitation because we want to bring what in the budget, what is the contribution for refugees, and how they can be more in the contribution. And one I want to address is on when we do the refugee resettlement. As you see, Canada this year, we receive a lot of refugees from Syrian refugees in special, but when they resettle to Canada, they come in the resettlement with a debt. And the debt is that the transportation loans. They need to pay for the transportation to come to Canada, and what the government, because they cannot afford with that expenses, the government of Canada give a loan that they need to pay with interest. And in that will limit their contribution because when they just arrive, they come and they need to start paying on that. And we are looking as the Canadian Council for Refugees as a recommendation that we call on the government that they can waive and absorb all the costs of the transportation and expenses for refugees, as we welcome that the next year the government is absorbing, because also refugees, they need to pay for the medical costs, and the government of Canada from April next year they will absorb that. We are looking if they can absorb the transportation loans. Also, one of the things that we have been doing as refugees, giving in a contribution, is that we receive settlement services, and we are looking that it's a big investment, and one of our recommendations is that we are asking to the government of Canada if they can increase the resources for settlement services for refugees and immigrants, especially for refugees that they come in high needs, and that they can make it different levels on the support during the time that they are receiving the settlement services. The other that we are looking is in relation of refugees when they are in Canada, and we need to talk about how there are some limitations. And one of the things that we are looking, for example, in family reunification, we are looking that if the government can commit more resources to have a family reunification and reunite the families in minimum the 6 months, because at this moment the family reunification is taking too long, which makes the refugees that they, instead to concentrate their contribution here in Canada, they send some of the remittances access to their family in the meantime that they reunify. Also, we are looking at that any refugee, and especially refugee claimants, they have access to work permits. They do have access to work permits, but takes too long, takes more than 4 months. And in that case, what we are looking and recommend this year, the Canadian Council for Refugees, is that refugees, even refugee claimants, when they arrive to Canada, they have access immediately to work permit. In that way, they can start giving the contributions here in Canada. As well, we are, as you know, immigrants, we receive a lot of temporary foreign workers. We have also survivors of human trafficking, and we have also persons from other countries in which Canada cannot remove. And one of the things that we are looking is that if Canada, the government of Canada, can amend their policies in favor that these categories, they can have access for permanent resident, and in that way, that will give a better contribution to the Canadian society. And with that, I want to say thank you, and if you have any questions, I'm willing to answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rico. And you are video conference, just for people's information, from Toronto. So with that, we will turn to questions and try and keep them pretty tight. Ms. O'Connell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thank you all for coming. Unfortunately, I won't have time to ask all of your questions, so I'm going to kind of ask a more broad question for both the Green Budget Coalition as well as Canadian Climate Forum. I just returned from a forum in London talking about economic policy and climate change and how to meet our Paris Agreement goals. And so I hear you in terms of the policy, or in terms of the funds and the things you'd like to see. But one of the things we talked about extensively was the need for specific policy that is going to be overreaching, that would actually create private investment and innovation. And I'll give you a quick example. In the U.S., their defense procurement policy has put out a contract saying, someone design a gun that shoots around a corner, and anyone who can design that, we're going to buy a lot of them. And what that does is it puts a lot of the risk and innovation in the private sector, with the benefit for the technology, for the government in that case, as well as technology that comes from it that might not be intended. So what I'm asking for is, funds run out, funds are short term. What are economic policies that would actually change and move the process forward to really have innovation in things that are going to help us meet these goals?
Start, Miss Van
really
Ittersen.
Appropriate on the green budget side, actually.
I can't imagine you've been stumped by a question.
Where to start? We do focus relatively explicitly on policies that can go into the budget, and so fiscal and funding measures. I think you're absolutely right. I was just having a conversation yesterday with someone how to stimulate the innovation that drives and helps transform the economy is a pivotal measure, and it will require some confidence on the government's part. I think we have in our backyard Sustainable Development Technology Canada is a really good example of how to drive green innovation, and they have staff that are willing to take the risks and understand that to get the 3 big winners, you may have 7 losers. And I know that's not necessarily a perspective that everyone in government is comfortable with, but I think that kind of idea would be very positive.
If I can just add, I mean, not an economist, but if there's one thing we know is that the dialogue is so new in this area, and our symposium only emphasized that, and having long discussions with Mr. Basili about the first time ever that 12 clean tech CEOs came to Ottawa to speak to the federal government was last week, and he brought them. And that's the role that we see. The dialogue needs to happen, the silos need to open, and conversation. You need all those people around the table to come up with the best policies.
Thank you. Perhaps then I'll just throw out that as a challenge. I was with Chatham House, so Chatham House rules says I can't tell you who said what or who was there, but I can tell you the investment banking industry understands this. There are trillions of dollars in investment, private investment, looking for renewable funding, but I'm looking for what I'd like to bring forward, and if it's not this budget, then in the future, what are the policies that create that stable environment that investors choose Canada? So I'll leave that as perhaps a challenge, but I want to move on to just quickly, because I know I don't have a lot of time here, but CPA, you mentioned in your brief, and I know you're aware of our motions, so that's great, but you mentioned in your brief about why a fair and efficient transparent tax system is needed, and you mentioned about sometimes it's unfair to certain folks, and I'm sorry I don't have the exact quote in front of me, but could you maybe highlight an example of where it is unfair and therefore demonstrates the need for a simplification or a review?
Well, one of the areas, and that is right, over this tax system has had a number of changes over a period of time, and we believe a full review is required at this point in time. And if you look at the SHRED program and stand back from that program, and is it achieving what we wanted to achieve with the program? There's an impact of that program where there is a tax credit, and the tax credit it's very useful to a lot of smaller businesses, but a lot of larger businesses which have to compete internationally with their various divisions around find that tax credit is not a very effective method of doing their innovation, and that's an area where we have to have a look at in the tax system to see where the SHRED should go and see if it is achieving what we want to achieve.
And
that will be it, Mr. Deltel.
Thank you so much, Chair. Thank you so much, everybody, to be here in Ottawa. And I would like to pay all my respect to those who are with us by video conference. And by the way, my question will be, I will go to British Columbia, to Vancouver, to talk with Mr. Derek Nightbor from the Forest Products Association of Canada. Sir, I wish you the best, even if we don't have a deal on the wood, but we are with you all the way. And by the way, speaking of that, I would like to know what you think about the imposition of a new carbon tax for your industry, how it will affect your business.
Good question. Thank you. We've long been on the carbon climate change fighting train, if you will. We were one of the few sectors that lent our support to the Kyoto Protocol many years ago. As I said, we're one of the only sectors that has launched a comprehensive plan. There are a couple outstanding questions, I would say, to the member. One is a significant impact on transportation costs, especially in rural communities, northern remote communities where most of our mills are. And then also the global competitiveness question, which either I know this committee or the International Trade Committee has been doing some work on to better understand how we would benchmark, against our global competitors in this space if they don't move in a similar direction. On the other side, we see opportunity we are using a lot more fossil fuel alternatives based on biomass in the forest sector. So although we see some challenges on the one side, we see a lot of opportunity as well. The way this national program is rolling out, it is going to be absolutely critical. Most of the power here clearly is going to be with the provinces. So we're right now working with our provincial counterparts to see how this is going to track across the country.
Well, thank you so
much. For a minute, the bells have started, and technically I think we have agreement, but we need unanimous consent of the committee to stay an additional 15 minutes. So do we have that? We okay till 5:45? Okay, agreed. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So I will share my time with Mr. Abouziaf.
Yeah. Thank you all. I would have just one quick question to Mr. Cross. You mentioned sectoral policies, structural policies, short-term, long-term. Mostly, economically speaking, and you're better economics than myself, the short-term policies, mostly the results of these should be predictable. I mean, at least you can gauge what you're going to get out of it. Long-term policies can, hit and miss sometimes within margins. what's we doing wrong? I mean, the short-term policies, spending money based on last year budget and this year budget isn't working. We're not creating jobs. Things not working really. What are we doing wrong, and what can we do right in order to be able to be safe moving forward and at least dealing with the issues? And is the situation bigger than us? Is the problem is deeper than we think?
Right. It's certainly a problem that's bigger than us. It's something that's affecting all the major Western advanced industrialized nations. In fact, many of them appear to be in a much worse position than Canada. Think about Japan, which has had 15 fiscal stimulus packages over the last few years. Europe is in a much worse condition. North America is actually relatively well off. We have a younger, faster growing population than these other areas. Canada in particular has another advantage. Our banking system wasn't destroyed in the last crisis. Guess what? That actually helped a whole lot. So, we do have these advantages. But the point of the work coming out of BIS is that the stimulus you're going to get from monetary and fiscal policy is going to be limited when you're operating in an environment of very low productivity growth. That puts a very low ceiling on which the economy can grow. You can pour more and more stimulus in, and you very quickly hit this upper limit. So the BIS advocates that we adopt more policies that would raise that productivity ceiling over the longer term.
And the short term?
In the short term, they even recommend that if we withdraw some stimulus, even if it slows growth a bit in the short term, in order to get back some of that long-term potential.
Merci beaucoup.
Sorry, Guy. You'll be energized.
Merci. Je vais commencer par...
Thank you very much. I will start with Mr. Nyber from the Forest Producers of Canada.
Probably the most important recommendation was not in your presentation. What should we do regarding the industry with the lack of a signed agreement on softwood lumber? Because your members will actually be facing a very tough time, like they did before 2006. And I know that some in the industry actually have some recommendations for the government. I think it might be good for the committee to actually know what would be required for the industry to be able to weather the storm.
That's an excellent question. So FPAC is the national voice of the industry across Canada. As this committee knows, there are different regions of the country that have had different opinions on what a deal should or should not look like. That has put FPAC, and our board made a conscious decision to say, listen, for the benefit of the industry, FPAC is going to step back during the negotiation time and is going to allow the regions, Quebec, BC, Alberta, and others across the country, Atlantic Canada, to partake in the negotiations at a regional level. This pre-budget submission, of course, was done, parallel to this conversation happening. So as we get closer to the possibility of no deal or significant tariffs, I think there are a couple of things that we should talk about as a group. What other ways that would not further incite a trade war with the U.S. that government could partake in. So some examples, investment in doing more building domestically with wood, for example, through some of those building code changes. Supporting a pan-Canadian reforestation plan to plant trees similar to the announcement Premier Clark made in BC as part of her plan because in our industry, for every tree that's harvested, we plant more than one to replace it. But there are areas of pests and fire and whatnot that could be planted. More money to even further diversify markets and grow them in Asia. So I think there are a number of levers the government can pull to build on this submission in a worst-case scenario.
Merci beaucoup. Je vais maintenant passer à la...
Thank you very much. I'll now move to the Conference for Advanced Life Underwriting. Kalu.
Thank you very much for explaining actually the situation for family transfers. I cannot help myself because my private member's bill wants to solve this exact same situation. I want to assure everybody that I did not ask Mr. Blatt to actually make this presentation. I was surprised to see it here.
Never met him before.
Actually, I met other members of CALU, and you had the support of the organization. Didn't know it would be part of their pre-budget submission. But the example that you're giving is actually very telling. You're talking about the sale of a $2 million business. If you're selling to a member of the family, you're going to pay basically $800,000 in taxes. If you're selling to a stranger, you'll pay $250,000 in taxes. So that's like $500,000 more if there's no tax planning that you're losing in your retirement fund, basically.
And that's exactly it. And all we're saying is that we're looking for a level playing field in this area. There's a lot of detail in the submission, and it's somewhat technical, and I know we're in a time crunch. But the bottom line is that we want to give Canadians the opportunity to decide who they want to sell their businesses to. Sometimes it's the family. It's the right decision. Sometimes it may not be. We want to level that playing field. And so right now it's punitive to the family. And we think that can be adjusted somewhat. So
that's a fairly recent change, because my understanding is that it came to be separated or differentiated like this when we expanded on the use of capital gains back in the 70s.
And Quebec happens to be leading this initiative, which is exciting. And so I think if
Quebec
we could
actually voted and changed that that part back in the 2015 budget.
Correct.
Mr. Galland, you know about the example that was given by Mr. Blatt regarding family transfers. You know about the situation or the problematic we have right now.
I'm not aware. I'm not aware of that particular circumstance. No,
okay.
I wasn't. Okay, is it? Yeah, but I can understand exactly where you're coming from in relation to the transfers. Capital gains exemptions was put in at a point in time, very beneficial, very good tax planning in relation to smaller businesses. Now, and that's an example of a tweak that maybe should be looked at in relation to how the system should be changed if you bring up situations like this.
We had to cut it there. Mr. Ouellette, sharing your time with Mr. Serra. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. This is a question for Andrew Van Itterson. It's concerning, you mentioned the Assembly of First Nations and diesel electricity on reserve. So a lot of the electricity they use on reserves comes from diesel engines. So, it's not very environmentally sound. I was just wondering if you knew a little bit more about the proposal.
I can tell you just to have a little bit. They're recommending, I think, roughly $800 million. There's three funds together, which total in the range of $1.4 to $2.3 billion over 3 years. And I know this has been a challenge that the Green Budget Coalition's been talking about for years, so there's certainly bright people working on it, and we've been talking to the Indigenous and Northern Affairs Department, and the challenge, I think, is to find a couple of models that work and that can be replicated across, I think there's roughly 180 communities. I think biodiesel can be part of the solution. I'm not sure that they've landed yet on the solution that can work for all of them.
Well, thank you very much, and then I'll be very short because I know we have to get on to the Randeep. I was just wondering, for the chartered accountants, you had mentioned in one of your outlines here the National Strategy for Financial Literacy, and I was wondering if you could talk a bit about your ideas, or if for instance, on postal banking, because a lot of rural communities, Indigenous communities, don't have access to banking facilities as such. And, postal bank, for instance, might be very beneficial to actually increase financial literacy, because you can open a bank account, you could be doing all sorts of other small types of banking and generate a profit perhaps for Canada Post at a reasonable fee.
Yes, in relation to CPA Canada, we see financial literacy as a very big thing for moving Canada forward. We've got approximately 11,000 volunteers at the moment who are involved in financial literacy and trying to educate the overall general public around the level of savings they're going to need for their retirement, the impact of CPP, forced savings effectively. So something like you had just mentioned there is another aspect to this, which probably is very, very important, to bring the whole Canadian population, further educate them along the financial literacy. We're living longer at this time, and we need to start dealing with all of our financial aspects of our world and of our life. And potentially that's what that you just brought up there is probably one of them in relation to what we need to do.
Thank you very much, and now I'm going to pass it on to my, as a Tai K, onto my good colleague here, Randeep. Sorry.
One question, Mr. Sari, but I would mention to the previous discussion there was a good presentation in Halifax by Ron McDonald from NR Store on this issue of diesel in the north and green proposals. Mr. Sari.
Being from the West, I have a question for Mr. Nyber from the Forest Products Association. I know you're facing a very critical time with the softwood lumber agreement coming up as an issue out west and across the country. How does the $200 million for advanced wood products help you export goods that perhaps would not come under any tariff or countervailing duties in that? Does that help you create better products that you can export not only to outside of the U.S., but does it also allow you to export innovative products to the U.S.? I want to know, and if you can elaborate.
Yeah, there is definitely an export strategy with the U.S., but we're also looking to diversify those markets. Back in 2002, we had about 86% of total forest product exports going to the U.S. It's about 67 to 70% today. So we've definitely diversified already, but there's huge opportunity. One of my CEOs says China is the new China. There are a lot of other opportunities still in China and throughout Asia, and we believe it's a two-part play. One, to get more taller wood buildings in Canada to support domestic demand, and then support exports to new and emerging markets.
Mr. Albus, one quick question.
Thank you, and I am going to ask Mr. Cross. I appreciate everyone's contributions today. Mr. Cross, I understand from a macroeconomic viewpoint, Canada is a small open economy. And because of that, stimulus by our own government in response to any desired outcome more or less makes it very difficult to say all you need to do is put in X amount of dollars and you'll get Y out. Would you agree that it is a difficult thing for a small country like Canada to stimulate its economy vis-a-vis versus what we had with the United States? Where that mutual stimulus at the same time actually had a greater result during the Great Recession?
Very much so. I mean, the standard economic model is that there's a yin and yang between monetary and fiscal policy. We've seen recently that when you increase fiscal stimulus, the markets go, okay, the economy is going to pick up, therefore they they expect interest rates to go up, they bid up the exchange rate. And much of the benefit you get from fiscal policy is offset by monetary policy. We've seen the reverse now. As expectations for growth are revised down, as people expect the stimulus from fiscal policy to yield fewer bangs for the buck than expected, lo and behold, we've seen the exchange rate fall back, give back about half of its gains. It jumped from 70 to 80%, and recently it's fallen back to about 75%. As markets price in a weaker outlook for the Canadian economy.
We'll have to, sorry, my apologies, we'll have to cut it at that. Just for members, the buses are waiting outside, so don't dilly-dally. We have to get to the vote. Tomorrow morning, keep in mind, 8:30 tomorrow morning with Dominic Barton, followed by the presidents of BDC and EDC. Yes. No, I'll have to look. It's here? It's here. The meeting is here. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all. Sorry for the rush.